I came from Clearwire. I've only been at Sprint about 4 months myself, and I think it's a great combination of assets between Sprint and Clearwire, and then having SoftBank in the mix and the extra capital that affords Sprint as a whole to invest in the future is a great advantage for us right now versus where Sprint has been in the past. So, and we're thinking like champions. It's our goal to be number one, and that may seem audacious, but at the same time, you can't be a champion unless you think like one, and that's definitely the mentality that we're instilling in everyone in the company. The LTE is our third TDD technology that will be deployed in the US. So we go back over 10 years probably with the technology in itself. So while the Chinese have been very active, and rightly so, in 3GPP and trying to normalize TDD and FDD, I think we have some of the best TDD engineers in the world working at Sprint right now. To answer the second part of your question around driving the ecosystem, let me step back a bit and talk about how we did it before as Clearwire, and then talk about the differences of how I see it going forward. Clearwire is a very small company. We were very successful doing some things that really impacted the industry as a whole. With a few people, created a band class that used to be thought of by vendors as unique to Clearwire, but now through partnerships and working in the GTI and other forums, we've been able to really make it a truly global spectrum band, and actually one that's embraced by the top 3 economies in the world. So there's always that ongoing potential to influence through partnerships with other carriers in industry forum like GTI. But beyond that now, with SoftBank and Sprint and Clearwire all together, I've been told, I don't have the data back myself, but I've been told we're the number 3 buyer of smartphones in the world now. And so obviously, in addition to the sort of indirect influence that we've done in the past as Clearwire, there's a lot of very direct influence we can have as a purchaser of volume in the marketplace. And I'm sure all of those will play a role in the future. Backhaul is definitely a very interesting question to touch upon, because we're seeing exponential growth in end user traffic, and we've solved it. If you think of Sprint and Clearwire as 2 different entities, we've solved it 2 different ways ourselves, and we're in the process of rationalizing how we look at backhaul going forward. So I don't have a definitive answer to you other than the former Clearwire network is predominantly backhauled with microwave and wireless technologies. That has proven to be very cost effective for us as a means to scale rapidly to high bandwidths. It does require a large CapEx investment up front, and it's something that in the end is not something that Sprint, with far more sites than we had as Clearwire, chose to do, and so that's much more of a leased backhaul perspective right now. It's with the Sprint sites. Going forward, we're actually actively looking at numerous different options of how we really invest in the future to get the most scalable backhaul possible, and that could be anything from fiber fed to more microwave, or combinations of all those. And the one area that is still very nascent is backhaul to small cells, and really what we can do there. We have a very small, few hundred small cells that were part of the Clearwire network that were all fiber fed and done so at very high cost, in part to prove out the technology, in part because we really wanted the spectrum, the depth of capacity that small cells would afford. So in downtown Manhattan, 150 small cells, we literally dug up Fifth Avenue multiple times to run fibers to individual lampposts. That's not scalable for the long term. And so we're actively looking at different technologies, probably on the order of 30 different companies we've looked at so far at different wireless technologies for backhauling small cells. So very active area, but no definitive answers right now. Well, LTE Advanced for us, the biggest thing, most obviously, and the thing we'll gravitate to first is really doing carrier aggregation large scale. So we have the advantage of having on average 150 megahertz of spectrum in the top 100 markets in the US. And the obvious way to take advantage of that is to aggregate that spectrum together. And furthermore, unlike some carriers who are aggregating different spectrum together, which has its own issues, especially if it's radically different propagation between different frequencies, this is all contiguous spectrum that by and large, contiguous spectrum we can utilize. It's very simple carrier aggregation, allows us to scale to very big fat pipes. And from a marketing perspective, the fat pipe lets you advertise higher peak rates, but probably more impactful to the company and to the customer is the amount of capacity that affords. Is not that people are going to be getting 200 megabits in burst, because relatively few will unless it's 3 in the morning. But that pipe is capable of handling that much more user traffic, and that's really what we're going to gravitate to very quickly, to really leverage speed and capacity as a prime way of competing in the marketplace. It's very interesting for me to see representatives from various carriers around the world and listen to their perspective on problems and how they're solving them. We had a very interesting plenary session this morning, a number of different talks given, and basically everyone, no matter where you are in the world, has similar challenges. Maybe they're different places along the curve in terms of that challenge, but it's always very interesting to see how people are trying to solve them. And then this is an interesting conference because it's both fixed as well as mobile, and a lot of the problems you see today in fixed are going to become challenges in mobile, maybe even sooner in terms of bandwidths. But very interesting to watch that industry evolve and how it handles some of those challenges as well.